He come to me with money in his hand. He offered me. I didn't ask him. I wasn't knocking someone's door down. I was running from that. When I got out, I was in that. I was already through that. I had that. I had the studio. I went to the studio. I went to Fox Studios. I had it all. And I looked at it and I said, this is a bigger jail than I just got out of. I don't want to take my time going to work. I got a motorcycle and a sleeping bag and 10 or 15 girls. What the hell I want to go off and go to work for? Work for what? Money? I got all the money in the world. I'm the king, man. I run the underworld, guy. I decide who does what and where they do it at. What am I going to run around and act like I'm some teeny bopper somewhere for somebody else's money? I make the money, man. I roll the nickels. The game is mine. I deal the cards.
Hey guys, Trip here. I'm noticing you guys really like my lore videos. Whether we're talking Elder Scrolls, Devil May Cry, 40k, or Vampire the Masquerade, these tend to be some of my most popular vids. So I figure, why not dive a bit deeper into one of my favorite game series, Warcraft. Yeah, I know I'm critical of this franchise. I've made no secret of my complicated relationship with WoW's modern storyline over the years. But that doesn't change the fundamental fact that I am obsessed with the Warcraft universe. At its best, this is one of the most creative and unique fantasy settings in gaming. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Warcraft is high fantasy creative fuel. It's impossible to interact with the setting and not be inspired by it in some way. It takes tired fantasy tropes and reframes them in endlessly compelling ways. And most of all, it's a setting packed with lore, mystery, and environmental details that spark the imagination to this day. Now, I could gush about classic Warcraft lore all day, but I also want to try and ease you into all this. See, Warcraft may be simple on the surface, but it gets pretty convoluted the deeper you go. It's an endless rabbit hole of history, politics, and esoterica. It's honestly one of my favorite things about the setting. It feels like a living world. Point is, Warcraft is big, and I want to ground this discussion in something relatively simple. So what better way to start than with a single character and his faction? If you've read the title of this video, then you already know I'm talking about one of the most beloved edgelords in video game history, Illidan Stormrage, first of the Demon Hunters and master of the Illidari. If you're not familiar, this is one of Warcraft's most iconic characters, and arguably one that modern WoW has ruined the most. And after countless retcons and contradictions, that means he's also one of Warcraft's most misunderstood characters. So let's fix that today. Let's go back to the beginning, analyze Illidan as he was portrayed in the early days, find out who he truly is, where his character could have gone, and maybe find out where Warcraft went wrong with him. So without further ado, let's take a look at Illidan. The story of Illidan is inseparably tied to one of classic Warcraft's most fundamental forces, arcane magic. In classic Warcraft, arcane magic is a force of raw chaos and limitless creation. It's a force channeled by higher beings like demons and titans, and in the hands of mortals it often becomes dangerous and unstable. In primordial times, at the center of Azeroth's supercontinent, once lay a massive well of arcane water. Known as the Well of Eternity, this water would seemingly control the evolution of whatever was exposed to it. So it was that a tribe of trolls were transformed into the first elves. After eons of exposure to the well, these night elves created a magical utopia for their people. But this empire was doomed to fail. Over time, the use of arcane magic causes addiction, mutation, and madness. The arcane also attracts demons like flies to honey. demons who may whisper false promises into your ear, offering power beyond reckoning if you just let them into your world. In short, Night Elf civilization was a ticking time bomb, and it was only a matter of time before someone snapped, before this shining civilization was smothered in darkness. So when the Sorcerer Queen, Ajara, sought to cleanse the world of imperfection, of course the demons answered her prayers. All she had to do was summon them into her world using the Well of Eternity as a giant portal. This was the beginning of what we now know as the War of the Ancients, and it's when Illidan's journey truly begins. Illidan's origin is simple enough. He was once a common wizard, living among the grandeur of ancient Night Elf civilization. He had a druid for a brother named Malfurion, and an unfortunate crush on his brother's girlfriend named Tyrande. So when Ajara summoned demons to the world, Illidan was forced to choose between his lust for power and the lives of his loved ones. After embracing the darkest of magics, siding with Ajara, and having his eyes burnt out by Sargeras himself, he ultimately joins the side of the rebellion and becomes an integral part of the war effort. In order to stop the demonic invasion, the Night Elf rebels destroy the Well of Eternity, the source of their arcane power. The world was saved, but irreparably scarred in the process. The Well's explosion was so cataclysmic that it sundered the world into the continents we know today. Magic had created Night Elf civilization, and now it had destroyed it. But after the demons' defeat, after the cataclysm that broke the world, Illidan still couldn't let go of his lust for arcane magic. In secret, Illidan created a new well on the mountain of Hyjal to restore the Night Elf's way of life. Thinking he'll be hailed a hero, he's instead dubbed the Betrayer. Night Elf society was rapidly changing, and the people had no more tolerance for arcane sorcery. For his repeated treachery and his hopeless addiction to magic, Illidan was sentenced by his own brother to an eternity in prison. For 10,000 years, the man is left alone to lose his mind. Fast forward to Warcraft 3. The demons are returning, and they're using a zombie plague to prepare the world for their arrival. The Night Elves, now guardians of the natural world, spring into action. Tyrande Whisperwind, High Priestess of the Night Elves and Illidan's sister-in-law, breaks with Night Elf tradition and frees the Betrayer, believing he'll be integral to the world's survival. It turns out Tyrande was right. Illidan amasses an army to drive the Legion out of Felwood, saving his people one last time before forsaking them entirely. During his campaign against the Legion, Illidan consumes the magic of the Skull of Gul'dan, one of the most powerful warlocks of all time. This action leaves him irreparably changed, and it's a decision that will change the rest of his life. When his allies come to congratulate him, Illidan is no longer an elf. He's a full-on demon. He fulfilled his end of the bargain at the cost of his own soul. In classic WoW, demons are beings so warped by magic that they become fundamentally magical beings themselves. Inherently sinister, demons feed on magic and suffering like food and wine. Their very blood is the source of a potent and corrupting form of magic known as Fel. To explain this without getting demonetized, if arcane magic is powder, Fel magic is rock. If Viper lived on Azeroth, he'd be rapping about Fel magic. Seeing Illidan back to his old ways and having taken things further than ever before, Tyrande and Malfurion exile Illidan from Night Elf society forever. Illidan is happy to accept, frankly tired of his people's judgment at this point. On top of that, he's already thrown his lot back in with the Legion, or so it seems. It's at this point that Illidan plainly states his motivations.
Lordship over this world was never my aim. Only power. Only the magic.
He doesn't care about conquest or rulership. He doesn't even care about Night Elf society. Illidan cares about magic and power. For him, everything else is either ancillary or a means of achieving these goals. He's a bit like Darth Bane in this way, He wants power for its own sake. Illidan wants to be the master of magic, the undisputed lord of the arcane, a title currently held by the Legion itself. Illidan wants to be at the top of the cosmic food chain, and he promises a place at his side for those who follow him. With this in mind, Illidan has no intention on serving the Legion forever. He gathers his followers into an army, later known as the Illidari, and begins to plot the overthrow of his masters. In the beginning, this faction was mostly comprised of other demon hunters, as well as demonic night elves known as Satyr. It should be clear at this point that Illidan isn't a hero. Sure, he hasn't caused a lot of damage yet, and he's not actively working against our heroes, but this man is clearly self-interested. Illidan's on his own mission, and it's obvious his goals won't always align with our own. When Illidan returns to the story, he's calling in some old debts. Illidan summons a group of Naga, descendants of the elves that once served Ajara. Led by the handmaiden Lady Vash, the Naga become the backbone of the Illidari. At first, this appears to be a simple alliance of convenience, but Lady Vash slowly develops a true loyalty to Illidan and his renegade cause. By the time of the Burning Crusade, these Naga gladly die for Illidan with his name on their lips. It's clear that, despite his obvious villainy, Illidan is an inspirational figure to his followers. People believe in him, either because they see him as a lesser evil, because he sates their desire for vengeance, or because they think he's just crazy enough to win the cosmic game. Illidan has a mission from his new masters. The Scourge has grown too rebellious. Destroy them in the name of the Legion. As they prepare their assault on the Lich King, the Illidari destroy Night Elf settlements in their path, giving the Night Elves plenty of reason to despise them. Illidan makes it clear at this point that he's an enemy of mainstream Night Elf society, and that whoever isn't with him is against him. Illidan comes very close to killing the Lich King, nearly melting Icecrown Glacier into the sea using advanced magics. But he's thwarted by the Night Elves, who only see a mass murderer meddling with the environment. Despite his failure, Illidan weakens the Lich King to the point where he loses control of half his forces. This sets the stage for Sylvanas and the Forsaken Rebellion, but that's another story. Having failed his masters, Illidan escapes from Azeroth entirely, hunkering down on an alien world called Outland, the homeland of the Orcs. Illidan is desperate for new allies. His Naga decide to make inroads with the Blood Elves, who are reeling from both the Scourge and abuse by the Alliance. Under the Alliance's nose, the Naga help the Blood Elves survive one of many suicide missions. When discovered, the elves are condemned for working with monsters and are sent to the dungeons of Dalaran for execution. The Naga save the Blood Elves once again, breaking them out of prison and helping them open a portal to escape Dalaran. Vash explains that the only way to save the Blood Elves is through Illidan, and together they teleport to his new home. After rescuing Illidan from invading Night Elf wardens, Illidan informs Kael that there is no cure to magical addiction. Not for the Blood Elves, not for the Naga, not even for himself. Instead, Illidan promises the Blood Elves more magic than they'll ever need. He then welcomes Kael'thas as his protege, and Kael regards him as his new master. This relationship isn't expanded upon much, but it seems genuine. It really feels like Kael is being set up as Illidan's second in command, with the Blood Elves as his champions. Together, Vash, Kael, and Illidan tame the chaotic world of Outland, rallying rogue Draenei led by Akama and Felorcs led by Kargath Bladefist to their side. During the invasion, they face off against the planet's master, a Legion Lord named Magtheridon. It's here that Illidan comes the closest to spelling out his plans.
Are you an agent of the Legion? Have you been sent to test me?
I have come to replace you. You're a relic, Magtheridon. A ghost of a past age. The future is mine.
Illidan sees the Legion as an outdated system, and he wants to replace it with his own. What exactly this means is unclear. Will Illidan simply lead his own army of demons to destroy the cosmos? Will he be the lesser of, 4 evils at this point? Is it even possible to destroy an ancient and seemingly infinite army? These are the questions that Illidan makes us consider. What we do know is that Illidan's ambitions are always rooted in a desire for magical power, and that anyone who sides with him will get a share of it. But it's only a matter of time before the Legion Lords discover Illidan's hiding place. Kil'jaeden, master of the Burning Legion, discovers Illidan's little army and demands that he use it to finish the Lich King once and for all. Illidan, having no chance of defeating Kil'jaeden, and seeking to fulfill the Blood Elf's desire for vengeance, agrees, and rallies his forces for an expedition back to Azeroth. Once again, Illidan puts up a phenomenal fight, and would have easily defeated the Lich King if not for the Scourge's own champion, Arthas Menethil. Arthas narrowly defeats Illidan in single combat, forcing the Illidari to retreat and cementing the Scourge as Azeroth's new superpower. And this is where Warcraft 3 ends. The Scourge remains in power, Illidan is licking his wounds, and the Burning Legion is breathing down his neck, no doubt questioning Illidan's loyalty to his supposed masters. All in all, I hope this helps you understand the clear trajectory of this story, or at least what it seemed to be. So far, Illidan's a fairly consistent character. He's a junkie for power, a rock star among his followers, and a beacon of hope for the ne'er-do-wells of the world. But it's in World of Warcraft that Illidan's story starts to get a little weird. At first, things seem fine. We see a few Blood Elves in Azshara serving Illidan's strange whims. The Warcraft Encyclopedia claims he's bolstering his forces in Outland, preparing for an invasion by the Legion. The Encyclopedia also notes that despite Illidan being a demon and therefore evil, he maintains just enough of his morals to stay sane. The result is a demon who can, at times, come across as fair or even noble. This is what ultimately sets him apart from his enemies, and why his followers choose him over the alternatives. All in all, the story seemed primed for a showdown between the Scourge, the Legion, and the Illidari. And who knows where the Forsaken, and by extension the Horde, would stand in such a conflict. This, for me, is an example of a perfect RPG setup. It sets the stage for a decades-long conflict full of political intrigue, ideological divides, resource wars, and all sorts of adventures to happen as a result. Classic Warcraft is filled with these kinds of layered, politically deep conflicts that are full to the brim with storytelling potential. But that's not what happened. We didn't get to see this tension slowly build up into something glorious. Instead, we got the Burning Crusade. Arguably my favorite WoW expansion, but the one that began the slow descent of Warcraft storytelling into wasted potential. Nowadays, it's largely accepted that Illidan's character has been fundamentally changed. Through a combination of inconsistencies, constantly changing motivations, and fundamental changes to the lore, he's just not the same person anymore. Generally, people argue that the Burning Crusade reduced Illidan to a generic madman. To make matters worse, we kill him and his allies before the expansion is even over. That's right, all that setup, all those potential story hooks, the relationship between Illidan and his lieutenants, the sheer potential of this burgeoning faction, none of it went anywhere. Many years later, Illidan returns in the Legion expansion, and he seems like an entirely different person. Some say they moved him too far in the opposite direction, turning him into some edgy Jesus figure who was actually on our side the entire time. This version of Illidan was always against the Legion, and every negative thing he ever did wasn't for any obsession with magic, but because he's so brave and edgy and secretly an anti-hero. I'm not saying the story never criticizes Illidan, but it's always from the perspective of someone going too far for the greater good. Legion portrays Illidan as a dark messiah, someone who did the wrong things for the right reasons, and who was punished for it again and again by closed-minded authority figures. To me, the whole thing gives emo girl mad at her stepdad vibes. I wasn't a fan. In the midst of all this, the character we initially met in Warcraft 3, the character described in the WoW Encyclopedia, has been completely forgotten. So who is Illidan really? Who are his followers? What have we learned from the original canon? First off, Illidan is an anti-villain, not an anti-hero. An anti-villain is an antagonist you can't help but root for, either because they have noble motives, aren't very good at being evil, or because they're just too endearing to hate. Illidan and his band of misfits may be crazy, angry, and addled by magic, but there's something about their plucky spirit that I can't help but root for. They're obviously bad guys, but they haven't really done anything that bad, at least when compared to the Legion or the Scourge. And their constant close victories and setbacks bring me to my next point. They're underdogs. Every member of Illidan's crew is a junkie, a reject, or some kind of mutated freak. In one way or another, they've all been broken by magic and those who wield it, and they're trying to regain their agency by wielding it themselves. They're constantly looking for a break, an out, a moment of respite, but that moment never comes. Throughout the Blood Elf campaign, there's this constant sense of flying by the seat of your pants, going from one disaster to the next, and just barely claiming victory at the end of it all. There's something almost inspiring about a group of people this low on the cosmic totem pole bringing the fight to those at the top. And this leads me to my next reason for loving the Illidari. Wait, that's not what we're doing. And this leads me to the next pillar of the Illidari, their delusional ambition. These weirdos actually think they can overthrow the Scourge, the Legion, these impossible cosmic-level problems that threaten the foundation of reality. They're mad at the cosmos, mad at fate, mad at higher beings that pull our strings and send us to our doom. But unlike most of us, they're actually going to do something about it. They'll take the fight to the very masters of the universe if they have to, and they're crazy enough to think they'll actually win. Now, Warcraft 3 doesn't go into detail on Illidan's motivations, but I think we've pieced it together pretty well. But what about his followers? Why do they stand behind Illidan despite his setbacks? Why do even the Naga die for him? Why do his people willingly call him master? Why have they chosen him as their Dark Lord? And that leads me to my final point. His followers believe he cares about them, or at least cares about their goals. At various points in the story, Illidan gives each of his followers a reason to fight by his side. For the Blood Elves, he promises vengeance against the Scourge, the Legion, and more magic than they'll ever need. For the Broken Draenei, he promises vengeance against the Legion for destroying their world. For the Naga and his demons, they too are addicted to magic, and they admire Illidan's command over the arcane. They see him as a kindred spirit, a being worth following. Now, we have no idea if Illidan is being genuine or not with his promises, but ask yourself, what makes for a better story? A careless liar who uses his followers like any other bad guy, or a bad guy that honors his friends? I feel like this is a question Blizzard defenders don't ask enough. You can technically justify any character action as long as it has precedent in real life, but not all choices make for compelling stories. Illidan is a washed-up, relapsing rock star from an age gone by, and here comes a new generation of fans ready to follow him into hell itself. What does someone like Illidan do with that responsibility? How does he balance his self-interest with his lingering sense of morality? How does he fulfill his people's desires while directing them toward his own goals? And at some point, does he come to genuinely care about them? About the nation he's building? I find these questions far more interesting than the generic villain we got in the Burning Crusade, or the hot topic hero we got in Legion. So what if things played out differently? What if Illidan's arc maintained a cohesive vision from start to finish? If we were to go back in time to classic WoW, where's the most logical place for this character to go? Well, here's what I think. I think Illidan should have remained an anti-villain. I think he should have remained a magic-obsessed Darth Bane with a scrap of honor. He should have become a rival power against the Scourge and the Legion, not out of a desire to save the cosmos, but out of a desire to become the sole cosmic superpower. As with all of WoW's core villains, I don't think he should have been killed off in a single expansion. I think he should have become a recurring antagonist and occasional ally. Illidan could have remained an iconic and endearing villain, but it often feels like Blizzard doesn't understand the potential they have, and they'd rather change the story than build upon what they've already done. But who knows? Maybe one day Warcraft will be rebooted, and we'll get to see Lord Illidan the way he was meant to be. But what do you guys think? Should Blizzard have expanded upon Illidan's original characterization? Or do you prefer the way he is? What's your favorite version of Illidan? And if you're new to WoW, as most of my viewers are, which version of Illidan seems most appealing to you? Let me know in the comments. Personally, I think I've made it clear which version I prefer. But hey, that's just my opinion.